As we all know, lockdowns, shelter in place, and travel restrictions were disrupting activity in every part of the economy when COVID-19 hit the world. Demand evaporated in some categories and skyrocketed in others. As they struggled to keep their businesses running, companies were planning significant strategic changes to the configuration and operations of their supply chain, which brought forth enormous technological shifts. Can COVID 19 be considered as the black swan event that finally forced many companies and entire industries to rethink and transform their operations and supply chain models? We'll be seeking answers to questions like these with the help of today's discussion. So in order to give insights and perspectives of successful industry executives, we have with us 5 accomplished leaders from significant corporations. We have with us Mr. Amod Vijayvargiya, a senior business leader at Genpact with over 25 years of multicultural cross-industry experience in driving growth, transformation, and operations. Sir has worked in organizations like Capgemini, Godrej, Grasim, and Hitachi Consulting, with stints at San Francisco, Bombay, Paris, London, and many more cities. His expertise lies in aligning client needs, thought leadership, technology, talent, and passion with collaboration. Sir is an alumnus of NIT Bhopal, NITI Mumbai, and University of California, Berkeley. Next, we have with us Mr. Neeraj Lal. Mr. Neeraj Lal is the Chief Operating Officer at Apollo Hospitals. He's a specialist in healthcare operations excellence, P&L, businesses, and have held many senior positions in Indian hospitals for a number of years. Sir is also a certified internal auditor for NABH, NABL, and ISO 9001. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Ayushi. Next, we have on the panel Mr. Piyush Pandey. Mr. Piyush Pandey is currently serving as the Director of Operations at Schneider Electric. He displays expertise in operations management, marketing, business development, and various other domains. He has contributed to Siemens for over 15 years. He is an alumnus of Symbiosis Institute of Management Studies and also completed his executive program in business management from IIM Bangalore. Welcome you, sir. Next, we have on the panel Mr. Sarthak Prakash. Mr. Sarthak Prakash is a leading global best cost country sourcing strategy and deployment for GE Gas Power. He has been with GE for over a decade now. He has been working closely with commodity leaders in the domain of supplier quality and engineering to achieve the best cost outcomes. His responsibilities include developing growth suppliers as well as identifying new developing suppliers in the cost competitive regions around the world. He has previously led sourcing initiatives and FPA roles for various GE businesses in South Asia. We welcome you, sir. And finally, we have with us Mr. Shubhankar Chatterji. Mr. Shubhankar Chatterji is a proven operations and supply chain leader having 3 decades of industry experiences with organizations like Tata Motors, Tata Cummins, Beef Scottam, and is now with Schindler India as Chief Supply Chain Officer. He is specialized in setting up large greenfield operations, turning around value chains, presently focusing on building up an agile and resilient supply chain organization. He has done his master's in mech engineering from NIT Jamshedpur and MBA from Kelley School of Business. He's a certified Six Sigma Master Black Belt and a research scholar in management with IIM Kashipur. We welcome you, sir. I would now request Alan to take the session forward.
Thank you, Varun. So a very good evening to one and all. I would like to acquaint the panelists with the flow of the event. So firstly, I'll be posing the questions and then the floor will be open to all the panelists to share their thoughts. So we hope for a fruitful discussion. So let's move forward with the panel discussion. So the very first question that I would like to ask is that last year, most of the companies planned to pull multiple levers in their efforts to improve supply chain resilience. As a result of which, there was a combined increase in the inventory of critical products. So what role do you think localization or regionalization of manufacturing is going to play in order to reduce the vulnerability to the unanticipated shocks? Any of the guests would like to take it?
I can take it. Okay.
Yes,
so basically, what has happened? Question is that we are going through a complete metamorphosis. Okay. If you go pre-COVID, we all knew that the concepts of GIT, concepts of theory of constraints, and single piece flow were the ideal for manufacturing. Maybe today still it is. We all knew that your delayed differentiation, which is actually a concept of only bringing the proliferation at the end of the value chain while sourcing the bulk product from low cost sources, maybe from China, was the major theme of the concept of supply chain. So basically you focus on cost minimization. You get the bulk products from a country which mostly it's China or Vietnam or places where the end commodities were cheaper, because still it is very much more economical to get certain products from China. And you do the end of the line proliferation, which is actually tailoring or made to order at your place. So this was the kind of value chain which we had pre-COVID. Post-COVID, and just the situation still persists, and it's now almost 2 years, the situation has changed. Okay, first of all, the commodity prices have gone up skyrocketing. Okay, and it is now looks stable, but it is almost 35 to 40% higher than what it was somewhere in October 20. That's number one. Number two, your freight conditions are very different. Okay, it's very uncertain. It is extremely expensive. It is almost 6 times what it used to be earlier, and hence getting products from a distant country is no more economical. It's not economical for the time being. Maybe freight will rationalize maybe after another 2 years or so, but it will never go back to the pre-COVID times. So coming back to answer to this question, that keeping an inventory, okay, inside the factory was not a great concept earlier, because you were able to operate in just in time. Your supply lines were pretty steady. Let's say from China or any other low-cost country, ships used to reach from Shanghai to Mumbai in exact less than 24 days. Freight was very stable. So the need for strategic inventory was not much. But today the situation is very different. Freight, even if you get a booking in a container, okay, even if it is or a container getting a ship, it's a chance. It takes almost 10 days to a week today from X works to the port and to the shipping line. Okay, and then there are chances of it may get deboarded at some other port in between. So these uncertainties now leads to us to believe that you need to keep some inventory. Okay, a JIT concept of zero inventory or single piece flow may not work. Number two, the commodity prices and the scarcity of chipsets and electronic parts in China also makes you, and many other commodities, also makes you believe that the concept of getting bulk out of mostly China and bringing it to India and doing some delayed differentiation may not work. So organizations have gone ahead in really rapid fire mode in localizing products to make it, and also we have very good incentive from the government for supporting Make in India. So net dependency. So net having some inventory is good today. Localization is good today. Okay, and nearshoring the manufacturing close to the customer is good today. So that's the post-COVID scenario.
Thank you, sir. Any other of the guests would like to add on, sir?
Sure, I'll take up on that. Pankaj, thanks for your comments, and I wanted to thank everybody for hanging out with us on a Sunday afternoon. I'm sure the students and the other panelists had other plans for their Sunday as well. So I just wanted to get that out of the way when we start. Look, so I completely agree with everything that's been said. My day job is sourcing, and I mean, we like to say that there's no better time to be in sourcing than now, because it's become a real challenge. I mean, commodities are through the roof. Freight is worth its weight in gold, if not more. The way that we're measuring the resilience of our supply chain is on 4 criteria, right? Safety, quality, delivery, and competitiveness, in exactly that order. And to pick up on the points that Shubhankar mentioned, each one of these you get more control on when you nearshore, when you localize. You can call it any word that you want to, when you move closer to the customer, right? In terms of safety, obviously, the lesser time that you're spending on the seas, the lesser time that you're spending trying to scramble to get material to the last minute, the more control your manufacturing and your supplier will be able to exert on what they're putting into the product. Because more you take away from them and the more risk you put into that process, the more liable they are to fail where it is. The second thing in safety as well is that, if you're shipping something from halfway across the world and it sees a failure in another hemisphere, then getting engineers again halfway over the world, your response time is completely different versus if you've localized manufacturing, your response time can be less than 24 hours, right? So that's safety. In terms of quality, almost all of these things apply as well. And we find that the more relaxation we can give on schedule, the more control we can give to our manufacturers and suppliers in terms of schedule, the better their quality tends to be, right? Because they can focus on making a great product, not just getting out of the door. Delivery, obviously, no doubt about it. I mean, logistics, freight, after everything that happened in the Suez Canal and with Oklahoma, with the petrol pipeline, it's been phenomenally bad to negotiate on those aspects. So from a delivery perspective, the lesser time that something can spend on the sea, the lesser that we can send something by premium air shipment, the better it is for us and for the customer, right? And all of these things together, we've now realized that measuring something just on the basis of raw material price to raw material price or component price to component price is no longer going to cut it. So we use something that's called total landed cost. What is the price of procuring, manufacturing, shipping, and delivering to the customer to their door? And you realize that total landed cost, you might be buying from the cheapest country possible, like Vietnam, but total landed cost will make sense if it's deeply localized as close to the customer as possible, right? And so SQDC and total landed costs have become very important lessons for us that we've learned the hard way in the last couple of years, but now we're investing a lot of resources to pivot our supply chain around these concepts.
Thanks. So Sarthak, I'd just like to, I think and Shubhankar, those are absolutely great points. I'd just like to make a quick comment and, maybe slightly controversial, right? But, is it only just about cost, right? Because I think that's what the world is, at least I see is in the clients that we work with in Genpact, a lot of focus now is around, agility and resilience, right? Because, and not just about cost, right? Because, but what has happened is that the supply chains traditionally before the COVID hit us and even earlier, right, have traditionally been designed for costs and not so much for agility and resilience. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree with you. And that's why, I mean, SQDC is the way that we want to drive it. And I mean, at the end of the day, Amod, you and I come from the same pedigree. Genpact and GE are children of the same company, right. Thought process, right? So we're focused on safety, quality, and delivery. And in that, if we can stay flat on cost or not lose money, that's the direction we're going, right? So I completely agree with you. If we're still going after cost in today's supply chain, then we're going to miss out on very critical aspects and potentially endanger human lives.
Absolutely.
And Amod, to add to your perspective, very rightly, cost is not a driving criteria today because your service levels, your delivery levels today depend a lot on availability.
Right.
And today, even with a premium, availability is not ensured. So for automotive worlds, for industries which are dependent heavily on chipsets, even with a premium, whether it will be available or not, it's a question. So cost has just gone out of the roof today. Okay, today more so it is the delivery to the promise, delivery to the customer is important and needed, and that's why maintaining a strategic inventory of critical shortages or critical parts is important. Having a visibility across the supply chain is important.
Right.
Okay? So you are very right. I guess cost is no more a driver today.
Sure.
While it is critical, while it still remains critical, but
still,
not,
yeah, of course.
it's not the key driver actually.
Right. Agree completely.
So thank you all the three guests. It was really exciting discussion on this question, and your explanation about the pre and post COVID differences in supply chain will really help us gain more clarity about inventory management in the post pandemic era. So I'll then move to the next question. So my next question would be related to just-in-time model. So as we know, as per the JIT model, like items are created to meet demand, like not created in advance or in surplus. So JIT model was quite popular before the pandemic, but however, companies who followed JIT model, especially during the pandemic, they faced a lot of issues. So do you think this experience during the pandemic will lead to a decline of JIT after the pandemic, that post and pandemic? Is there a chance that JIT would decline? Yeah, anyone can take this.
I can take
Yeah.
this question. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry, I did not see somebody else wanted to speak.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
after
Piyush.
you, Shubhankar sir can also. Yeah, you can start.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just give a perspective, that when we talk about GIT, what GIT is, very quickly, not really getting into the detail of GIT. So when we talk about GIT, we are talking is removing the waste. So whether it is transportation, whether it is overproduction, whether it is waiting time, whether it is queue time, whether it is anything which is not useful. Now when we bring efficiency, the other lever is portion. Now the question is important, that whether because of the pandemic GIT philosophy will go away. And here I would say that look at the length of the issue. When you are in a very efficient mode, say take two companies, one is very efficient who is following GIT completely, and other is not so efficient. The inventory model will vary maybe from few days to couple of months. So when we are in a situation when the pandemic is lasting, when still we feel that by end of 2022 still we will be in the same situation, then question is not about GIT, because whatever good or bad companies were there which were low inventory, all those effects and everything is gone in the initial period itself. Now everybody is at the level playing field. Now what comes in that case is the second lever, which is the reliability lever, and in reliability lever goes beyond GIT. So it's about having the strategic alliance, for example. So what kind of alliance we are having with the supplier organization, whether it is a opportunity kind of a business relation or alliance we were having, or it was really a long term. So that makes a very big difference of the supply chain, how robust it is. Third portion is the relationship what we are having with our vendors. So the SRM comes into picture. The long-term forecasting, because even if say you are working the reliable and long-term forecasting model, then that also will not be sustainable. The resiliency, which is the new word which somebody also Amod used the word resiliency, and are becoming more and more prominent. And resiliency is not only about the process, it's about the mindset, it's about the supply chain managers way of working and all. Also it depends upon which segment we are working. And fortunately, if I see, we all the panelists, they are coming from different backgrounds. Somebody is from healthcare, somebody from power segment, somebody from IT sector. Your ability to influence your supplies, because if you are in a very cost sensitive market where your ability to pay up extra to get the material will be limited, and on the contrary, if there is a organization which has ability to pay extra and there's a premium on availability, in turn they get more price from the market, then it becomes a more value adding proposition. Also it depends upon and also taking one step behind, what kind of contracts and agreements. So GIT for me is not directly which will be impacted because of the pandemic situation. GIT is there, and this philosophy will remain, because different companies they use different words, so nobody is going to go away with the philosophy of efficiency. But at the same time, focus will shift from very robust and reliable supply chain organization. So that's my.
Okay, let me add a bit to this.
Sure.
So question is, what was JIT? It was a typical concept of a single piece flow, So just in time is part of the lean manufacturing, originating from Toyota production system. So basically no waste in the value chain. So be it in the manufacturing, be it in the warehouse, be it in the supply lines. This worked very well, and this works very well in the steady state. Okay. So I guess Piyush's video is on. Maybe it is a lag in the.
Yeah, no, it's a lag. It's a lag. Piyush is not concurrent. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Anyhow, so basically, we know when a steady state, when the supply lines are steady, you have 100% confidence that the part which comes will come on time. JIT is the best concept. But even in JIT, if you look at the fag end of the value chain, the JIT is prevalent. Whereas in the initial part of the value chain, somebody is holding inventories. Okay, let's say for a steel mill to produce, they cannot produce in JIT. You take one ladle of steel, maybe 250 tons. Okay, so when you take one heat, it is minimum 80 to 120 tons. So there is no JIT out there. Okay, so it was always a trade-off of some strategic inventories. Or let's say if you produce a chipset, you don't produce one chipset, you produce in millions. Okay, and that's stocked somewhere else. It's not inside your factory. So if you look at the TPS, typically in Toyota production system, order consolidation, milk run, these are the concepts which supported the JIT. Okay. Today, so that worked very well. So today, the issue is you can still have JIT within the four walls of your organization. So your manufacturing setup, your delivery setup, your delivery lines, your order consolidation setups, that can still operate in a JIT mode. That's okay. But when you look at the back-end inventory, which are your raw material, so if you buy steel, if you buy paint, if you buy electronics chipsets, there you will not survive in today's world with just JIT. Okay, because the supply lines are disrupted. You don't have the chemicals coming on time. You don't have the raw material coming on time. There is always a scrambling, and whosoever bids the most gets the raw material. So it's very uncertain. So if you make the inbound or the strategic inventory, which feeds your operations, feeds your delivery lines, if you try to keep that today in JIT mode, you may actually bring in a sense of lack of reliability in the value chain. So the current theory or the concept is that strategic inventories need to be maintained so that your value system or the value stream has a reliable output. Whereas inside the four walls of your operations or your order consolidation center where you have control, there you can still maintain JIT. So I guess, so what was the original concept of JIT? It's slightly getting tweaked in the current scenario. And that is specifically because of the uncertainties across the value chain. You don't know when one of the ports will be shut down in China. So last month they shut down the Ningbo port, the major port out there, just because of COVID, nothing else. Month before that it was shut down because of storm. You don't know. Okay, so then we had so much of disruption. So that's the concept. It is becoming hybrid. It's a mix of strategic inventories versus concept of lean within the four walls of your premises. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to add? Okay, so thank you so much, both the guests, for sharing your views, and it enlightened us with the basic understanding of JIT. So JIT, which emphasizes on zero waste in different stages of manufacturing and supply chain, and the current trends related to JIT manufacturing, we were able to understand in depth. So we also gained insights about how supply chain resilience has become significant for the industry. So we can conclude that JIT is there and it's gonna be there. So just the focus will be shifting and will be evolving with the current situation. So I'd like to move to the next question. So COVID pandemic initially led to disruption in IT operations. But on the positive side, we could also see that it pushed a lot of organizations towards digital transformation in their IT operations. So I would like to know from you panelists that how this push towards digital transformation is going to impact the operations dynamics in the coming future.
Okay, maybe I can take that, Alan. Yeah,
Yes.
and so because at Genpact, and this is what we have been working with our clients over the last more than 20 years, and just to share with all of you, see, change management is always one of the most complex agendas when it comes to transformation and change management at the client end. What I have seen in the last 2 years is that, what essentially, COVID and the related, digital transformation was already becoming, more and more important for most of our clients, whether in the consumer products space, right? Because the whole idea was that, we had to, drive a much stronger customer experience, and customer experience became extremely critical to the industry, or in the, or in the healthcare space, or in the manufacturing world, right? So everywhere digital transformation was becoming more and more important, but still change management was a challenge, right? Because, these organizations, whether we take, Coca-Cola or Kraft Heinz or, even GE, for example, right? Which Genpact has always had a very strong partnership with. There was significant amount of resistance to that change. What I have seen is that now the companies themselves are looking at a very rapid paced, basically transformation, right? And they are almost demanding it. So companies like Genpact, or Accenture or IBM, we no longer have to try, and my esteemed colleagues on this call, can probably, comment on that. But the thing is that, that change management has significantly, shifted. Now the clients want faster transformation, right? So now clients are not talking about, multi-year transition plans. They are talking about, what can we achieve in the next 6 to 9 months, right? Which is, I think it's a combination of factors that has probably led to it. But I would definitely say that the pandemic has, and now the bigger challenge, of course, is around in the area of operations and supply chain, is that because if you talk about the IT sector, right, what the biggest challenge for us is the talent supply chain, right? So I think right now what the industry is witnessing is this insane war on talent, right? And especially in areas like supply chain, to have the right kind of talent is a continued challenge. And because right now, one additional point that I would say is that what the companies want is not just the, the tools and the technology, right? Because that's just one part of it. I think they want, elimination and simplification of processes, right? They want, globally standardized processes. They want optimization of their existing IT assets, which is, of course, all the money that they have spent on SAP and S/4HANA and all of that. They want insights from the analytics, right? Because data is super important. And I think that is where, and coming back to the talent supply chain, to have the talent which actually can deal with both technology and business domain and the data and analytics is very hard to get, right? We call it bilingual and even trilingual talent nowadays, right? And that is what I would actually encourage all the students on this call. It's great to have so many of you on the call. I would say that please focus on, not just the business and the industry domain. Please also focus on how do you become more data literate, because that, again would, but definitely to answer your question, I think, I mean, the IT industry is tackling all of these challenges, by multiple means. But ultimately, I think the clients, they want faster. The expectations have really become much high when it comes to transformation. I don't know, Shubhankar, Sarthak, Piyush, you may want to add.
Neeraj sir, you're on mute.
Yes, if I can Neeraj, go ahead, please.
Okay, I know I'm out of place, all your G's and Schneider and all, but while most of the people working from home, the team healthcare was working from the hospitals. So shockingly, healthcare, is the slowest adopter of technology, being second to shipping. But thanks to this pandemic, which has escalated the adoption of technology and penetration of digital health, which is saving so many patients, and the working from home healthcare and all. So pandemic has taught us how to use technology, digital way, in this rapidly changing technological changes. So as far as pandemic is concerned, the most important thing, our online consultation has gone up, because the count of consultation, physical consultation, was going down. Planned surgeries and procedure was going down. People were calling, but we cannot help them because hospital were flooded with patients, including the newborn vaccination. Every day we are getting phone calls from the parents, from the anxious parents. Vaccination is key, but it is very, very difficult. So we started using our platforms to use from physical consultation to a tele consultation. So we have seen a change. We were doing less than 5% consultation on telemedicine route, but because of this pandemic, more than 40%, all the doctor specialists have taken a teleconsultation. AI cameras we have used, like a patient who's there in the ICU. So it is a multi-specialty consultant who was supposed to come and see the patient, but these consultants cannot able to come. So machine learning and AI we are using. We are sending the patient details on the AI and the machine learning tools, and all other multi-specialty consultant, maybe a nephrologist, a cardiologist, or a neurologist, they are seeing the patient condition and asking the doctor who are posted into the various ICUs what can be done. We have also used AI cameras for the attendance and checking the moods of our patient as well as doctors. So whenever a patient is there in the ward or an ICU or a OPD, say for example, whether they're happy, they're sad, they want some help, our customer care manager used to see all these views on the platform which you're using for the AI cameras, and they proactively approach them. I understand you're not very happy inside. How can we help you? All our doctors, we used to see the moods of our staff and the doctor and staff nurses. Say for example, in the morning, they're coming up, they're happy, but while they're going out, their mood is not good. We capture these images on the cameras. We use those things. Application of vaccination. When I was in Bangalore, we vaccinated 40,000 people in 8 hours time. We are using this technology through an app where a boarding pass can be generated, and within 5 minutes a vaccination can be given. I was talking about dose first. We are also using this digital platform in diagnostics. We have started a home healthcare. All our report, including the RT-PCR and antigen, we were using this technology, including the drone technology. We have separated our OPD building 300 meters away from the main hospitals. People don't fear coming to the main hospital because we are having an ICU and the COVID positive patient. So we are using drones. We used to transfer the sample from the OPD building to the main building where the lab processing was done. And I was talking about remote ICU. Most of the patient was taking care at home. So since we don't have our beds, all beds were full, we have taken some 3-star and 4-star hotels where the patients are parked there. And because of teleconsultation, remote ICU, we are monitoring the patient. And whenever the condition of the patient is going down or bad, we used to shift to our main ICU. So I think, and the most important thing what Apollo has done in this pandemic time, we have used this AI platform for pro health checkup. We have tied up with Microsoft For the you must be knowing there is a rising burden for non-communicable diseases. So we advocate people for pro health checkup. So Apollo Hospital, along with Microsoft, is an intelligent platform for the cardiovascular risk. So we used to see what is the cardiovascular risk for the patient, and accordingly the treatment is given to them. EMR thing, you must be knowing, whenever some patient visit the hospital, they are coming with so many files. So our compliance rate for EMR has gone from less than 30% to 75%. E-prescriptions was used. There no need for the paper notes. We are using EMRI to the great extent. All those things we have changed. The healthcare has changed our healthcare 2.0 in this pandemic. And as a result, we can reach most patients, like in this third wave, which is gradually going down. So I have seen very few patients has approached to the wards or the ICU. So we started a home healthcare where a nurse every day call the patient and see the vitals, what are the vitals of the patient, as well as our doctor. Every third day, doctor is calling the patient to know the status. So our more than 40% of the patient was on the home healthcare road. Most of the companies have done a tie with us for the home healthcare. So these are the things which we have attempted to do in this COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, sir. So I would like to thank both the panelists for such a detailed answer. Sir, you would like to add?
Neeraj, I fully acknowledge that you have taken so many nice examples end to end. And for me, one of the major change what has come that so far digital now with the pandemic situation, each and every person, whether even the most conventional person in the organization, what I have seen has started thinking in terms of digital. Acumen has increased. So that is, I will say, COVID has really worked as an accelerator in this situation. And even if I see the customer buying behavior, so if I talk about watch circuit breakers or vacuum interrupters, earlier it was like a push sale. When we have to sell equipment which is connected, which is with some kind of intelligent features, it was push sales that we have to convince the customer, and then customer will say yeah. But now if we see that customer sees a value, because if a transformer is or a panel is installed somewhere in the remote place, and in the pandemic time somebody has to go and service the panel physically, then it's much easier and much better that the panel or the equipment is connected and we can do the diagnostic offices. So these are, I will say, two major changes which has come. One is that top down to bottom up approach in terms of our own employee, the customer to pull.
Sir, I think you are facing some network issue.
Alan, maybe somebody from the operating team can text Piyush.
Sure, sir. We'll reconnect with him.
So these are the two.
Okay. So I would like to thank all the three panelists for such a detailed answer. So it really gave a holistic picture about the IT operations, and we also got a lot of insights, like how change management posed a challenge to the organizations initially, and how the clients are demanding digital transformation in a much shorter time span currently. So we also gained a lot of insights about how digitalization and technology is being integrated, and like how different industries, including healthcare sector, is also leveraging this digital transformation. So Ayushi will be moving forward with the next question.
Taking the discussion forward. So today, the most successful manufacturing organizations recognize that environmental responsibility is not only good for business, but it is also becoming an integral part of the way products are marketed and operated. So we would like to know from you, sir, with the developing countries shifting towards sustainable sources of energy, how companies, for example, GE Power, are adapting and contributing to the sustainable energy needs.
Sure, I'll start with that and then invite others to join in as well. So look, we're at GE, we've taken sustainability very, very seriously because we're cognizant of the fact that being a power company, most of the carbon that's being released in the environment today, the majority of that comes from, like, almost 40% of that comes from the power generation globally, worldwide, right? So as a market leader in power generation equipment ourselves, we have the responsibility to start making sustainable choices. Our strategy for the next decade is three-pronged, right? And a lot of the news that you're hearing about GE in the public domain about how we want to reconsolidate some of our businesses and how we want to de-layer and have a very focused energy business in the future is oriented around this as well. So our three-pronged strategy, number one, is grow renewables as fast as the market will absorb it. Right? The growth of renewables doesn't depend on specifically the manufacturers of renewable equipment, but the power plant producers who buy this equipment, and then the government who gives subsidies on producing renewable energy, right? So that's number one. We need to create the market and keep fulfilling the market. Number two, importantly, is how do we support decarbonization? So both limiting the production of carbon in power equipment and capturing the carbon that is produced, right? So we've already, within GE Power and with a lot of our well-meaning competitors as well, almost all of us now have the nascent capability to use hydrogen instead of a mixture of hydrocarbons. And as most of you would be aware, with hydrogen, the effluents and the emissions reduce significantly in terms of risk to the environment as compared to hydrocarbons. And some of our turbines today can already produce can run on about 10, 20, 30% of hydrogen. Our target is that by 2030, 2035, we want to be able to produce and install turbines that can run on 100% hydrogen, right? And then the third one, importantly, is focusing on grid, because renewables by itself, interestingly, can take away 100% of carbon in the atmosphere, but renewables can only do it 50% of the time, right? Gas can take away 50% of carbon from the atmosphere, but it can do that 100% of the time. So the ideal combination is to have both. And some of the countries that have successfully breached that gap have done that only by creating a massive grid and by creating redundant capacity, right? So you need to have a lot of semi-renewable or sustainable means like gas and hydrogen, and you need to have renewable means, and you need to have built-in redundancy, which your grid can flux on. So the combination of these three is what is very, very critical. And that's what companies in our circle, specifically sub-companies within GE Power, are trying to do to support sustainable energy needs. There's a lot more that I can talk about this. I mean, decarbonization is something that we're living day in and day out. But I'm going to pause. I'm going to let the other panelists chime in as well, and then we can, take the conversation forward.
Yeah, very rightly said, Sarthak. Let me take the liberty out here. See, sustainability and use of sustainable energy. I guess use of sustainable energy, I would say, recommend that it's a very narrow domain question. We should look at a sustainable supply chain, not the value chain. When you look at sustainable value chain, it is way beyond the tier 1 or the tier 2 industries. One thing which we need to understand, 70% of the pollution happens beyond the tier 1 industry, because the tier 2s and the tier 3s and the tier 4s, the amount of energy that they consume are more, and they are not green. Okay. So what happens is that if you have let's say it's your automobile plant, and today's automobile plants have all moved away from foundries and producing forgings. Okay, they don't produce anymore. They only machine, assemble, okay, and produce the finished product. But where does it come from? So all these high energy consuming industries, which are smelters, which are foundries, which are forging units, they are all the tier 2s and the tier 3s. Okay. Automotive or even many other different OEMs, they have a clear mandate to remain sustainable. Okay. That's taken for place. That's taken for granted because it's part of your commitment to the society. It is part of your governance. So larger industries do not have an option of not being sustainable. Why I'm saying so? As a result, what happens? The carbon footprint of the OEMs, the tier 1, okay, the OEMs, you always have a tendency or you have a commitment to be green. So naturally, what happens? You are using more of solar, you are using more of wind power, you're using more of alternate energy, you have variable frequency drives, you are consuming less. Okay, you are green certified, you are LEED green certified, so your carbon footprint is much lesser compared to your tier 1 and the tier 2s and the tier 3s. So tier 2s and tier 3s are industries which are maybe family owned, okay, running a cupola, running a smelter. They hardly have any commitment towards sustainability because it's not mandated by the board. They may not be a public listed company also, it may be a privately held organization. So what I'm trying to stress that 70%, it is studied, well studied, it is 70% of the consumption in the value chain happens in the tier 2s and the tier 3s. And that's where we need to focus. It's a responsibility of the OEMs to promote that the tier 2s and the tier 3s who are feeding them move towards sustainable energy. They move towards more of green energy, more of solar, okay, alternate sources, less of hazardous products. It's not just energy, it is also the use of hazardous processes. You don't expect your suppliers to use hexavalent chrome. Okay, you don't want them to use child labor. So overall, if you look at the focus of sustainability needs to cascade more towards the less organized industry, okay, where the majority of the violation is. So that would be my submission.
Any other panelists who would like to add? Okay, so I believe we can move to the next question. So thank you so much for enlightening us with these insights, sir. We got insights on how the
just I think
yeah, sir. Hello, am I audible?
Yes,
yes, you're audible, but
Yes,
looks like my bandwidth issue still remains.
Okay. Sure, sir. You would like to add on this question?
But just to
Yes, sir, please.
just to add that just two things from Schneider perspective, because it's my responsibility to say in this
Yes, sir. Please, sir, continue.
forum, because Schneider being in 2021 8,000 and top 100 global companies, what is apart from the very apt point what are considered, one thing what Schneider is doing to do business more in the sustainable domain. So 70% of the business of Schneider is coming from sustainability businesses. So this is apart from the supply chain side on the copy. The focus is on the domains which are more and more sustainable in nature. So that's just to add on that portion.
Okay, sir. So thank you so much for these insights. And we learned about how the power generation industry can play a major role in sustainable energy. The three-step plan, renewable energy or decarbonization and focus on grid surely was interesting for all of us to understand. How we need to look on developing a sustainable supply chain, we got insights about that also. And we learned about how OEMs can encourage usage of sustainable energy. So thank you so much for all these insights, sir. Now we will move into the next question. So the next question is, we would like to know your opinion on how supply chain automation can put systems into place that immediately react to adverse conditions like COVID-19. Do you think supply chain automation can solve many of the current supply chain challenges?
From the hospital side, the supply chain automation during COVID-19 was a big thing, and most of the things was on a manual mode. Like so many vaccines which we need to take, and we are a group of hospital. We need to send this vaccine to all our hospitals. So use of application from all manual process, right from the vendor registration, getting quotation, comparison, our GRN, all those things, and the automation is required for the cost control. If you see our the supply chain being the second area which is a cost concern for us. So the cost control through the automation is required to that. The cost of the labor, if you see from the healthcare organizations, still rely on the manual processes, expired or lost processes. You must be seeing more than 10 lakhs of the vaccines of Covishield and Covaxin is now getting expired, and we have no clue from the state government or the central government what to do for that. So we are using some of the automation in these processes, like medical supply spend thing automation, like integrated predictive analysis. So we use this machine learning and AI for the predictive analysis. For example, the current patient load to the amount of materials or amount of consumable here required depending on the occupancy, because our occupancy level is going up and down. Most of the planned cases was going down, and we are getting so many COVID patients and all. The use of the gases in the hospital was a major chunk. You must be seeing in the news. Most of the hospital was saying their hospital gas is going on a closure mode. So we have used the automation in all these processes, and I think because of this COVID-19 pandemic, our more than 70% of the supply chain process is automated now, and we are geared up in the third wave, and we can able to reach more patient and our client for this. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Anyone who would like to add?
See, automation and digitization both. What do you need today? What you need? So, what has COVID given us? COVID has given us something which is uncertainty. So, what COVID has given us is lack of resources. You may not, for example, in a factory, in a warehouse, in a distribution center, if there were X number of people, because of social distancing, you have to go to X by 2 or X by 3. It's it's mandated. It's by law. You cannot have more than 50% of occupancy inside the factories. Okay, that's number one. Number two, disruptions. Okay, with the transportation disruption, there are lockdowns, there are scarcity of raw material. So what is this? All this adding? This is adding to two things. One is scarcity of resources. Other is uncertainty of or availability of resources. Okay, in both the situations, automation actually helps to do away with the dependency on human labor. While India is still a low-cost country, and we do have onus or a responsibility to employ more people, but there are areas where it is a hazardous product, where people working very close to each other can cause further hazard because of the COVID situation. Automation helps. Okay. That's number one. Number two, along with automation is also your digitization. Right? Like, for example, if a truck comes with a load of material, okay, in earlier times, manually you would have checked all the GRNs or the goods receipt notes, which is there in the gate, and entered that. It takes a lot of a time, and today people are touch sensitive. You don't want to touch a paper and all. Imagine that we convert all of them into RFID, one RFID. Okay, so you can just get entire data uploaded into your ERP or MRP through just reading that RFID. Okay, you can just do away with this one example. Similarly, at multiple places, even for vaccine transportation, today the condition of the vaccine while it is transported is very critical. It has to maintain at a specific temperature. So today we have temperature sensitive RFIDs connected to GPS, where they can track the condition of the consignment before, as it reaches or during the transit also. whether the temperatures are maintained or not, whether the truck is stranded somewhere in a toll plaza, or the truck has gone under breakdown, it is reaching on time. You can literally track everything today and maybe on a mobile app. So these automations and digitization actually is bringing more transparency in the data transmission, which is most needed to being agile, because what is agility? You are basically ability to respond in a uncertain situation. And the ability to respond is only when you have information. And the information can only come when you have a better connectivity, and which is through digitization. Okay. So this is, I guess, really going to help. And COVID has done nothing but accelerated this move. So more organizations today understand this is needed. They are investing more on technology and getting more upgraded. So what could have happened in 5 years is happening in less than 2 years' time.
I just want to add one thing. In this ventilator time, we got 200 beds, which is ICU beds, and only 40 ventilators. So what you're talking about, Shubhankar, what we have done, you have to use ventilators in various ICUs. And since we got a shortage of ventilator, we don't know where the ventilator is being used or not. So we have used the QR code-based technology. Whenever a ventilator move from ICU 1 to ICU 2, our staff nurse, which is posted in these ICU, they are chatting with each other with these QR codes. And because patients is pressurizing, VIP pressure is too much, every minister is calling the patient require a ventilator. Even some of the corporate asking, why can't you block the beds? And they can pay exorbitant amount of money for that. But this QR code management of ventilator is very transparent. She can see where the ventilator is being used, where it is not being used. If you see the previous case, pre-COVID-19, the ventilator was being used and the manual thing was there, because ventilator is a manual machine which is connected to the gases. So I think this digitization and COVID have changed the way we use ventilator on the patient, and we can say which ventilator is used, which is not being used, and which is down for the repairs. So thanks to this technology where the hospital was making the optimized use of the ventilators.
Yeah, just on Shubhankar's and Neeraj's point, and I think very accurate, description, right, of both the, the cause of the issue as well as, what's happening as a response. The only thing I would say is that, I was reading some research that if we look at globally, only about 9% of the organizations worldwide actively design their supply chains, right? So supply chain in that sense, is an area. Organizations did a great job. If you look at it, what happened in the last 20-25 years, organizations did a great job of, figuring out how to drive the right systems for what is within the four walls, right? So the order to cash, the procure to pay, the ERP systems, all of that was really set up well. But supply chain and actively designing those supply chains, was still either not done or done through, Excel sheets, right? And so people did not invest on supply chain systems, because ERP systems are not the answer, right? Because you need specific dedicated supply chain systems. So what I would say is that the organizations are now, very actively looking to use, which is what, I guess the examples that Neeraj and Shubhankar gave is probably very valid. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Anybody who would like to add? Okay. So thank you, panelists, for explaining the role that automation is playing in addressing the dynamic challenges of the supply chain. We could understand how automation has helped the healthcare industry, especially during the pandemic, and how automation is addressing the challenges of scarcity or unavailability of resources. The examples of automation in the industry, ranging from RFID, transportation, vaccine inventory, to life's critical ventilator management, help us better understand practical use of automation in the industry. So moving on and taking the discussion ahead, Moving on to the next question we have, as the COVID-19 crisis continues to take its toll, a big question many organizations are asking is how to prepare for the future. Post-pandemic, when the economy is roaring on the road to recovery, how are companies ensuring the right people with the right skills are in a place to help a business survive and thrive? So we would like to learn more from you about how businesses are integrating strategic workforce planning in their models.
Okay, yes, I may take this again and with due permission of the other guests out here. See, what's important today is having the right talent at the right place. Okay, that's one. Secondly, because as I explained, agility is nothing but your ability to respond in an uncertain situation. That's the definition of agility. It's a very common buzzword today, but that's what it means. This implies that agility is going to work in an organization where you have empowerment. Because if you have to take a decision in an uncertain time, and if you have to route it through the typical bureaucratic process of a pyramidal organization, and every decision, let's say, has to come from the CEO or the CFO, so you don't have that time. Okay, so one task would be empowerment and delayering of organizations, so that the decision-making authority is right at the front, and there maybe not exactly the person who's facing the customer or the delivering a product, but at least within that circle, within that team, they should be able to take decisions, at least up to a certain limit. Okay, empowerment is one key thing. The next very important piece is that this is the time to differentiate between leaders and followers. Why so? People who stretch at this very difficult times, because environment is hazardous. Okay, you have risk, you are in a difficult working condition, people who are going to sites, catering, servicing customers, even our delivery boys from maybe Zomato, they're doing a fantastic job. They're risking their lives. Okay, you may be getting a food just by the ordering in an app, but imagine that person who is taking that risk and delivering at your place. Okay, but for these people to remain motivated, it is time to today differentiate between the doers and who are not so. Okay, it is time to differentiate the future leaders. They may not become a leader today, but it's time to identify them today. It's time to identify those people who are taking this additional stretch and ensuring that the business runs and the delivery system, the value system runs. Okay, tomorrow they are the budding leaders. So first we talked of empowerment. Next is identify your future leaders. And for these two things to work, the senior leadership needs to focus on more of creating a transformational leadership. Okay, following the traditional, very bureaucratic process of being directive, giving specific directions and working may not work. Okay, so people have to take decisions at a lower level. So empowerment comes only when you have an organization where the leadership is more transformation. It is motivating the young workforce. The workforce who is facing the heat from the market, from the environment, they need to remain motivated. And that can only happen when the leadership acknowledges that. So transformation, leadership, or empowerment, and identification of your future leaders, delayering of organizations. These are the things which will eventually today prove agility, and tomorrow it will give you the resilience. So this is, I would say, the transformation of the management or the leadership which needs to happen over time. It is not going to happen tomorrow, but at least from COVID, you have seen through the crisis and you know what to do. So at least that way, I would say COVID has actually differentiated the leaders from the ones who are not.
I just want to add one thing into that. I fully agree with Shubhankar. Now the hospitals, I'm talking about healthcare now, they have to change the way they work. Say, for example, hospitals are, if you see the 10% or 15% of the total beds, what we have in the hospital goes to all medical ICUs, surgical ICUs, and cath lab ICUs, and so on. But now if you see, the more and more hospitals are generally meant for these ICU beds and ORs. And now most of the healthcare, which is the OPD basis shifted to a home healthcare vertical. Say, for example, now more than 50% consultations are happening on a virtual consultations. And whenever there is a need, the primary consultations happen on a virtual consultation platform. Most of the hospitals who have graduated from one part to another, pre-COVID and post-COVID, now our OPDs are not so busy. So those OPDs we are using for pro health checkups, we have shifted most of our consultation on a virtual platform. Only the needy and who require a consultation with the procedure, they are coming to the hospitals. So I think hospital has to change from a conventional way of management to a post-COVID way of management. Say, for example, you have more ORs, more critical care beds. Most of the beds should be on the line of oxygen and all. And now the future healthcare planners and the hospital leaders are thinking in that way. Like whenever you come to the hospital, there is an isolated area where we have a fever clinic or a flu clinic. So these are the things which the new hospital planners are planning to have it. Use of drone into the technology, thanks to the budget which has come up. So I think you must be seeing drones are not only being used for the pizza, but they're also being used for the medications and for all other things we use. Because whenever I see drone technology, the first thing which come up, drone for pizzas. I think we have to use drones for medications, drone for home sample collection and so on. So that's my thoughts on this.
Okay, just building a great point, Neeraj, about the the right focus for drones, right? I fully agree. Just building on this, Ayushi and Alan, if I can make a couple of points, right? One thing is that as Shubhankar said, right, the leadership needs to change, right, and there needs to be and the reason for that is that also, if you look at, the millennial workforce, all of you on the call, you are all millennials, right? The whole generation that's described as. Now, the way that you all work is different, right? And the way that you all want to work is also different, right? The future of work is different from what it used to be in the 80s and even early 90s, right? It's changed quite a lot. I would say it started changing, with the liberalization, and then of course, last few years have just accelerated that. So the I mean, I think the workforce management or the workforce planning needs to be with that. For example, in my kind of companies, right, like Genpact or Capgemini or other companies, if we don't have the right automations, we don't have the right tools and technologies, etc., the people don't want to work, right? It will be hard to retain people, and retention of talent is a big challenge right now. So I think that needs to feed into the the whole way on how do we work with millennials, and how do we create the right sort of career paths for them, because they are not used to and they don't want to work in the command and control bureaucratic hierarchical structures, right? They are not looking for the ladder, they are looking for the lattice. They are looking not just for vertical growth, but also for more enriching value added work. One of the reasons why sustainability is so important for the organizations, going back to a previous question, is because the millennial workforce actually looks for organization who can provide them with a sense of purpose, right? So that's the just a slight build that I had on this.
Great. Thank you. I just want to put in my couple of cents on this, just to acknowledge the great resignation, right? What has been an outcome of immense burnout, what has been an outcome of people looking for getting out of pandemic fatigue and looking for a more stable profession has, it has drastically impacted organizations as well to rethink of how we want to manage, hire, manage, and retain talent, right? And everything that Shubhankar, Neeraj, and Amod said, while broadly speaking, these things apply and these are defining the future, I think in the short term, as a direct outcome of COVID, the Great Resignation has drastically impacted as well. Within GE also, we've had to make a couple of changes. We were, we've made some changes in how we want to hire, retain. We've made tremendous progress in terms of hiring from more diverse, parts of the world, more diverse portfolios, more diverse people, and that is also helping us get different viewpoints into the room, which often adds just as much as different skill sets add as well, right? So I just wanted to put a couple of cents there along with the other panelists. Thanks.
Yes, sir. So it was indeed very insightful for all of us to know how businesses are now moving at a pace that demands agility and adaptability from its workforce. Also, we could understand why transformational leadership needs to be followed by every organization. We could also understand that post-COVID, the healthcare industry is undergoing a transformation, and hence hospitals have to change their conventional way of management to a more transformed way of management. We get to know about your perspective on how workforce management has become, especially when dealing with younger generation and millennials, a very different perspective. Thank you so much, everyone, for your detailed information.
Moving on to the next question. As we all know, the role of Industry 4.0 becomes even more critical in the backdrop of a crisis such as COVID-19. Organizations utilizing digital solutions are better positioned to weather off a storm than their peers during this crisis. We would like to know what are some of the advanced tools being used in the industries for forecasting demand, since traditional forecasting algorithms rely on simplistic statistical tool to extrapolate previous demand. But an external shock at COVID-19 scale cripples such a traditional demand forecasting method.
I can start on that with an example from GE, to make it more specific. So in the power industry, both from the OEMs, the manufacturer's perspective, and then more so from the customer's perspective, reliability of power is a very defining metric, right? So if there's a turbine that's up and running, it could be hydro, gas, steam, or nuclear or wind. Knowing how long and how well that turbine is going to run and being able to predict when that turbine needs to be serviced, right, is the foundation of us giving good equipment and servicing good equipment, as well as everybody on call who's a user of power, knowing that they have unlimited, well, not unlimited, but unfettered access to power, right? And for us, traditional forecasting, obviously in the power industry, it's since Thomas Edison, it's been going on in some shape or form. But to really tweak it on its head was with the advent of what we called Industry 4.0, right? And getting digital into the mix. So we now use what is called the digital twin, which is that as much as the physical turbine exists and runs in a power plant, there is a digital turbine that is created through a variety of sensors and equipment that are installed in and around the turbine and the entire power plant, which is constantly feeding data back to a massive web, right? And what this does is that for the first 100, 1000 hours, this is just generating data. But after that point, machine learning takes over. And this turbine begins to teach itself on what portions are performing well, what portions are not, if a valve is not doing what it's supposed to, and to start predicting when is the next outage going to come. If we can predict an outage is when a turbine goes down and it eventually leads to power loss. If we can predict that before it actually happens, we can flip the grid, we can connect it to a battery, we can connect it to existing power sources, we can take that turbine offline, service it, and put it back online without anybody on the grid feeling that pinch. And so for us, to bring back to the question, traditional forecasting has pretty much gone out of the window, and especially for large assets like turbines across the portfolio, using AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning, with a combination of sensors and programmers is the future. Any other thoughts from the panel?
I just want to add that, this COVID had changed the way the hospital work. As we were talking, it is very difficult to maintain the stock of each and every medication and all. So Apollo got around 4,500 pharmacy chain across the country. I think there's no state or city where Apollo pharmacy is not there. So we are in the process of talking to Flipkart and Amazon because they got one of the best supply chain logistics. So we are tying up with them so that the medications, because we don't want to keep the medication in the hospital, we have to wait for the patient to come. So this Apollo pharmacy network of chains across many cities in India are using the logistic managements of Amazon and Flipkart for the medication delivery in the at homes. And we have launched an app which is Apollo 24/7. So which we have launched only in major cities now, followed by tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And these kind of a thing, a doctor consultation within 2 hours and medication just 30 minutes to your home. Because you cannot maintain the supply of the medication in the hospitals or at the home all the time, because now the variant of virus is changing. You must be seeing variant 1, variant 2, and variant 3. So these are the things which we are using in the Apollo pharmacy network for the management of hospital supplies.
Let me take it forward. See, forecasting for demand planning. Okay, demand planning, demand forecasting has always been there. Okay, but we all know how strong or how reliable has been our forecasting. In majority of the cases, you will see because of the supply chain lack of reliability, the forecasting accuracy doesn't even cross 50%. Okay, maybe somewhere it is 30%, maybe somewhere it is 20%. Now that is in a steady state situation. Now you add all the uncertainties of COVID. So to do away with this, what the industry is doing is use of AI, okay, is in a big way, so that at least you can get all the signals into the system. So by doing so, for example, if a truck is coming, so in fact, we have experienced this, a truck is coming from, let's say, Bangalore to Mumbai, and on the way, the truck gets stuck because the driver feels driver is not well, okay? So these kind of interventions change the complete scenario. Okay, or there's a lockdown. The standard way of forecasting or the standard tools cannot incorporate all these variabilities. So that's where we use AI or RPA. Okay, mostly AI, where the learnings from the previous transportation from what they are picking signals from many other places. Okay, it's not just that particular truck. Okay, the route sensing, the demand sensing technologies. So you have much better reliability into the data. Okay, the data that is flowing in is based on a huge data set. It's not just that individual data set. Okay, forecasting depending on the historical data of quite a few years, people do not generally use. They use forecasting just based on the current demand or data. So these are areas where Industry 4 is actually helping us to get more detailed analysis of the data, which was not possible earlier. Okay, so these tools are readily available today and industry is using, and I guess going forward, they will be more and more integrated with the industry. So Industry 4 is just not demand sensing or forecasting. As Sarthak rightly said, digital twin is a big way. Right? It's not only in the power sector, in the manufacturing industries also, we are using digital twin in a massive way. Before you set up a factory, okay, you did not buy the machines. You can physically see a 3D model of the machines and design the layout. What typically happens is that in a factory, the layout planning happens after the machines are in place. So it is sequential. Then you plan your material handling equipments, the delivery mechanisms, the routings. Okay, so it's sequential. It takes a lot of time. Okay, and what happens because of typical urgencies of projects and to deliver the product or launch of a product, these take a backseat. And it becomes a learning curve after you have actually launched the product or after you've started production. With digital twin, what you can do is you can see a physical replica or a twin of the actual setup. And once you see the twin of the actual setup, what you can do is that you can actually plan what will be the routing for material. Where will a person stand? Okay, in a particular, let's say, assembly line, how much he has to move. You can physically see it in a 3D model. That's what digital twin is doing. Okay, sensors have become cheaper, sensors have become smaller, sensors have become more accurate. You can use sensors at multiple places to sense the data, but just sensing the data is not enough. It has to be processed. So today, the capability to process data from multiple sensors has also enhanced, and that's again part of the Industry 4. Okay, so literally Industry 4 is helping us becoming more reliable, more predictable, and shortening the lead times.
Thank you everyone for sharing your views. We learned how Industry 4.0 is coming into play to address the post-pandemic challenges in the manufacturing operations. We also got to know how the traditional forecasting methods needs to be changed, and now we need a more robust system in place. We could also understand how the accuracy of forecasting can also be improved by AI and ML. Great insights, everyone. So moving on to our final question, we'd like to know your opinion on what skill sets would be useful for budding supply chain managers in the post-COVID era. As we all are budding managers, it will be really aiding us in our professional journey ahead.
Okay, if you ask me, first of all, the foundations need to be strong. Okay, post-COVID or pre-COVID, the foundations of supply chain, that needs to be strong. That anyhow you cannot bypass or you cannot take a shortcut. But on top of it, what you can add is that is important. What you can add is I don't recollect, but somebody said a quite I would say a focus on analytics. Because analytics going forward will be a game changer. Okay, and the amount of today analytics that we use, it's going to be different, and people who don't use will lack that capability. Okay, and they will may not be in the race. So analytics will be very critical. Areas where we have typically not paid enough attention in supply chain are logistics. Logistics has always been managed typically by the materials manager, and so okay, there is a huge scope of improvement out there. Okay, and because logistics today is end-to-end, which includes sea freight, ocean freight, air freight, plus your transportation, inland transportation, logistics and packaging is the industry which can also you need to have a hands-on understanding what's happening. Okay, analytics, logistics, demand planning and forecasting has always been there, but the need today will be more because you are forecasting in a very, very uncertain world. Okay, so these are the few areas I would say that you guys still need to focus, while the traditions of warehousing, distribution, okay, those still remain. You can't skip those.
From the healthcare side, I think anybody who want to come to the healthcare supply chain part of it, predictive part of analysis, I think it is very much important with the uses of AI and ML. I think that is very, very important, which can improve the hospital healthcare delivery and the financial of the hospital, because 20% of the total supplies depend on medical consumables. And like there's some companies known as StratMed and all, which has come up into the healthcare setup. They use a GPO kind of a processing for all your purchase needs. So instead of purchasing for few hospitals, they purchase for around 1,000 hospitals in the country. So you get better financial, and use of predictive analysis can change the way you work in the supply chains. All the best.
I can chime in. From my perspective, and a very big and exciting part of my job at GE has been, hiring interns and creating talent pipeline. And the one thing that we always want to ensure, this might be from a very manufacturing oriented setup, but nothing replaces technical expertise, right? And I know that everybody here, you're all in B school, and but it's okay to occasionally roll up your sleeves, take off the jacket, remove the tie, and just get on the shop floor. If you want to work in supply chain, you cannot do it from a glass-walled office. We're all here and we're talking to you about supply chain. So I'm working with the assumption that some of you have had supply chain experience. Some of you would like to get supply chain experience. None of you are going to get into supply chain management in your next role, right? You're going to get into supply chain operations. And to do that, again, don't expect to use a lot of your MBA skills. Be open to learning, be open to taking roles on the shop floor, visiting suppliers, getting to know the product, getting some elbow grease in. Nothing beats that to help you in the long run, especially with manufacturing giants. Thank you. Best of luck.
Okay, I just like to, just building on what's been said. I mean, I completely agree that domain and analytics, as we discussed earlier on the call as well, is super critical. One of the things that I think, and because I'm not, I work across areas, so I'm not, in that sense, I have a functional view of the domain. But one of the things that I am seeing, at least in the other areas, right, is that a lot of repetitive work, right, is going to be taken over by the machines. Right, we will create, RPAs. We will have automation. So essentially, a lot of work will be done by the machines. So actually, it's more of a question that I also want to ask my fellow panelists, right? That in my view, a lot of you as students, as you get into the corporate world, you should try to also develop some skills, and capabilities which are around cognitive sciences. For example, more sort of softer skills, or even, the ability to, use the judgment, where, artificial intelligence or automation or machine learning, might be going wrong. So, so those kind of skills, and also from a talent perspective, and from leadership perspective, as we discussed earlier, for people to have, the ability to judge, and basically do the kind of things that machines cannot do, right? That only human beings can do. I don't know what you feel by that. I'm just throwing it out. This is something that I have thought about a lot in the last 3-4 years.
No, very rightly said. At the end of the day, we do have the challenge of remaining ahead of the machines. Huh?
Yeah.
So naturally, the cognitive skills need to preside over our whatever technological advancement that happen. So as you, as young engineer, very much agree with Amod, is that your cognitive skills, and also with Sarthak, your hands-on experience, which the machine cannot duplicate. Okay, just ensure that you dirty your hand and get a real feel. So stand at the dock, see how the truck gets loaded, how it gets unloaded. Be at the warehouse, be at the manufacturing setup, meet the customer, have a feel what happens if the delivery is late. Okay, look at the inventories by your own eyes and how it is. So maybe the hands-on experience, cognitive capabilities, definitely. Oh, we don't undermine the development of skill sets which will keep you ahead. AI, ML, IoT, they are all definitely required. But at the same time, if you want to really be a sharp professional, you also need to have experience and hands-on feel. There's no duplicate for that.
I think Piyush sir wants to add something.
I'll just check the mic. Is it working better now?
You're audible, sir. Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. So just to add first on the Amod's point on cognitive, here I would say that for me it's like a crystal gazing, so very difficult at this point of time. So for the student, my message would be to rather flow with how the technology trends are trending, and really don't think beyond what is visible to us, because in the panel also we have very limited sight on that topic. But coming to the topic of the skill set, so the first what is very, very clear is the basic technologies which are basic skills for the supply chain, whether it is negotiation skills, whether it is lean, whether it is influencing, leadership, communication. Those are the things which are very, very basic, and whether for supply chain or other jobs is equally important. Second, the future, which we also spoke a lot about, AI, ML, business intelligence. Also, how to predict the performance deviation when you are in supply chain, and when we are living in this COVID situation. Our one of the job would be not to act like a human, but also to use the cognitive technologies to predict what kind of disruptions are on the card. So when we grow in our hierarchies, and here when we talk about the prediction, there would be three levels. One is the user level, there will be architecture designer level, and there will be developer level. So that is one area. And then we talk about the robotic process automation, we talk about the computer vision, we talk about automations, different kind of forecasting and scheduling and capacity management tool, whether it is Schneider, whether it is GE and many other companies. They are acquiring more and more companies, like AVEVA, Schneider has acquired ETAP, which are more product companies on the technology field, which are having very, very specific tools. So these things are going to come. Also, the question of cyber security again is a skill which is getting more and more prominent. Data side, the analytics, the data, not only the analytics, but the data management itself, the data visualization, that how do we visualize the data what we have got, and also the sustainability and circular economy portion. So these are the things which are getting more and more prominent. If I have to say in three words, then it will be digitization, sustainability, and how do we bring efficiency. But beyond these two topics of basic and future technology, what is there and what will remain there, and where we really have to focus on to remain in the business, is about the mindset and the soft things. And this is where this is the message which I also go to the new joinee in the organization, is how we think and how do we develop the improvement thinking. So whenever we are joining, whenever we are working, how do we keep improving the things from today to tomorrow? The things are we are making better and better. How do we innovate? And when we say innovate, not only the incremental changes, but also some kind of disruptions even in our own perimeter. We need not be Ola or Uber or XYZ. We can also make disruption in our own way. And this is where from management institutes, you might be hearing a red way of thinking and blue way of thinking. So which is like the new way: fail fast, create minimum viable prototypes, and be very, very agile in trying and failing, and then again trying and failing. Also, how do we create learning culture around us? So how we are collaborating with the people, how we are interacting and getting the knowledge and exchanging the knowledge from each other. So and also keeping the customer and quality and safety and sustainability at the core. So these are the topics which are between the past and the future. So this is about the mindset, this is about our behavioral side, and this is what for me will take us always along. So that would be my take on this.
Thank you, everyone. These insights would definitely help us explore the opportunities in the outside world. And as you rightly said, the foundations are required to be strong, and students would surely work on their foundations for a good career in operations and supply chain. We would also understand why technical expertise is important to be successful as a supply chain and operations manager. Cognitive capabilities and hands-on experience are few skills that are irreplaceable to be successful in the industry. Thank you once again for all of your inputs.
So thank you very much, everyone. Now I believe that we can bind up this session with the help of a short Q&A interaction session with the students. I'm sure today's session must have helped the students to get a better understanding of how COVID-19 has disrupted the operations and supply chain industry. Also, the discussion was really insightful, and I'm sure the students must have developed a deeper clarity about the latest trends and developments in this industry. So Varun, please take the session forward.
Yes, students can raise their hands and pose their questions based on the discussion. Yes, Ron, please go ahead.
Thank you to all the panelists for their insights. So my question to the panel is, before pandemic, most of the firms used hub and spoke model supply chain, which was proving very efficient. But due to the pandemic, this model affected the organizations the most. So post-pandemic, when firms are talking about supply chain revamp, will the supply chain model be changed? If not hub and spoke model, then which is the new model that will be coming?
Pandemic has caused interruption in hub and spoke model specifically because of the paucity of resources. Okay, availability of truckers, drivers, helpers. These have caused the disruptions. But going forward, we don't think the model is going to go away because that's a more efficient model. Okay, let's say you have a Toyota plant at Bidadi in Bangalore. Okay, producing all your Toyota vehicles. Their supply base is mostly in the northern side. It's in and around the NCR. Now, if there are multiple trucks coming from NCR to Bangalore, that's not a very efficient model. So what they do, they have an order consolidation center, okay, in the NCR region where they run milk runs and all the feeder vehicles reach there, and then they get loaded with the mother vehicle. So this model is going to remain. Might be because of COVID, we had restrictions, we had warehouse being shut down, okay, we had transportation issues. That might have caused interruptions, but this model still remains an efficient model. Okay, you cannot have multiple smaller vehicles feeding into a large factory. So you have to have order consolidation centers, even on the distribution side also. If you look at the distribution side today, all the big distribution organizations, be it Flipkart or Amazon, whosoever it is, they do have order consolidation centers. And there it is the reverse of hub and spoke, where you have the mother vehicles coming from the major sources, and then it gets distributed. So the model still remains valid.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? You guys can also post questions in the chat. I think, yeah, Paritosh, please go ahead.
So, sir, I have a question. Like many a times, it is seen that many manufacturing firms show a kind of dissent for a change, especially when it's time to implement a new technology. So, why it is so? Because we have seen that shifting to a newer technology is always beneficial in the long run.
Paritosh, can you give an example? I mean, if you don't mind, it's an interesting question, but like let's talk about examples since we're interacting here. Can you think of a big famous example where a manufacturing industry might have spurred change?
Let's say talking about this automobile sector, where there's a huge potential of shifting to EV cars, but when I particularly talk about Maruti Suzuki, so in the near future there are no plans of Maruti Suzuki to implement EV vehicles into the Indian subcontinent, but rather they are shifting to producing CNG company-fitted CNG vehicles. Even though there's a big scope for EV market in India. And big competitors like Tata Motors, Mahindra, they are planning to. Tata Motors actually have 3 to 4 models into EV segment, and why not buy Maruti Suzuki? And even no plans for that.
Sure. So I mean, interesting example, but I don't think manufacturing strategy has a lot to do there. It's more has to do with the uptake of EV vehicles themselves and an ecosystem to absorb EV, right? So while your point is correct, I don't think it has to do with Maruti rejecting that change at a manufacturing level, right? If I take the example of the power industry as well, right? We've after several decades of making the same product in steam turbine, we finally reached the point where we're as a company consciously making the decision not to make new steam turbines, right? And our entire strategy going forward is that we'll continue to service existing steam turbines to make them more carbon friendly and make them better and efficient so that they can keep running for longer, and governments don't have to install new coal turbines, because every time a new coal turbine is installed, we're just putting that much more carbon back into the atmosphere. So in this case, it's where however the manufacturing supply chain might feel about it, right? They have to respond to what is the need of the hour of sustainability and of decarbonization. So I know I've pivoted your question a little bit, but I felt it was important to just talk about an example so you can put in context that often it's not about manufacturing rejecting strategy, but a broader ecosystem that defines that.
Sure, sir. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
Sudipta, you can go ahead.
Thank you. So, sir, like I have a question regarding the ESG strategies right now across sectors. Like everybody is employing for the employees of sustainability and governance strategies in supply chain. So, what are the views in terms of the sector-wise, like how in future companies are going to adapt these strategies, and in terms of the verticals also, like healthcare and other manufacturing and logistics, like everywhere possible, like how ESG is going to be implemented and how change management in terms of like the past behavior and incorporating those ESG strategies in the entire organization would look like.
Okay, I can take this one. See, ESG has always been there. Okay, what is changing is that you are driven by 3 dimensions. Okay, number one, profitability of any organization. It's not the profitability for that year. What people are looking at is sustainable profitability. Okay, sustainable growth. So ES is nothing but trying to make your supply chain more sustainable, which means you don't have disruptions. For example, you must have heard of the major legal issue where Nike was sued because they were using child labor in Southeast Asia. What this results in? It just results in disruption. So to give this, nothing wrong with Nike, but question is that these deviations from the ESG concepts leads you to a situation which is not sustainable. Okay, if you are polluting more than what you are permitted, if you are dumping more hazardous waste than you are permitted, rather if you do the other way around, rather if you go to zero landfill, if you go to completely green energy, renewable energy, okay, become a net zero emitter out there, you're doing nothing but making the supply chain more sustainable. But why is that important? Because a sustainable organization, as listed in, let's say, in Dow Jones, actually helps your stock market. So your listing goes up. The shareholder, your stakeholders, which is mostly the shareholders, are looking towards their investment to be more sustainable, to grow consistently, and your share value or the market value or the market cap to grow sustainably means your backyard, your back-end value chain needs to be sustainable. And that's the basic need. So that's the external need. The second need is the customers today prefer to buy commodities which are produced in organizations or factories which are more sustainable. You'd not like to buy a product where you know that this particular, maybe from Zara or maybe from any good chain, was produced by using child labor. Will you like to buy it? You may not. So if that kind of article comes up in today's digital media, which is can do very easily, you really don't want to do that. So there is an internal need. And last but not the least, the next gen employees would also prefer to be associated with an organization who is more sustainable and stable and respected in the society. So there is an external need, there is an internal need, and there is a future need for your attracting new talents. So that's I would say the major role of ESG. So it's not choice today or nice to do, which might have been 10 years back. It's a necessity. It is required for your own survival.
Sir, due to paucity of time, we'll take the last question from Faraz. Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Shubhankar sir spoke about how COVID has made us aware of the uncertainties. One side, we are looking at the lean manufacturing concept, how they can be enhanced using the integration of Industry 4.0. But what about the backlash that was faced during the improper demand forecasting? If we see the concepts of lean manufacturing, it is quite logical to say that procurement was cut down, but the shortage of semiconductor that specifically impacted the automotive industry. Don't you think that these concepts play fairly, like they have failed largely under these circumstances?
I would say, I would not say failed. See, lean has worked for maybe 3 decades. Okay, lean got adopted worldwide. Okay, it's originated in Japan, then it got implemented in US, Europe, partly in India. So it was doing well. It's post facto analysis is very easy, you know. Post facto analysis is very easy, but did we at all dream about a pandemic maybe 3 years back, which could cause a interruption like this? Okay, so everybody has every organization has a concept called a business continuity planning. Okay, we all have business continuity planning. We had earthquakes, we had simulations for power outages, and also pandemic. But at the core of our heart, none of the industry leaders believed that pandemic is really going to happen till we face this. So this is a kind of I would say rather a force majeure situation. A world force majeure typically happens in a that's also localized. You may have an earthquake which is localized. You may have a tsunami which is localized. This is a force majeure which is pan across the globe. Okay, so this is unprecedented. Stating that the model of lean has failed because of this, I would say that's an overstatement. Okay, what we need to do, which I explained during the JIT discussion, is we need to little bit tweak the lean model and ensure that we maintain lean within the control where you have the control. So situation where you have control, you ought to do lean because that's the more efficient way. The situation where you don't have control, let's say freight from a distant country through several thousand kilometers and so much of COVID exposures, okay, where you don't have control, there you have to tweak the concepts. So it becomes a hybrid model. It's no more a pure lean. It's a mix of lean and strategic management and strategic inventory management also. So lean, I would not say it has failed. It needs a little bit of adaptation to the new normal till the time we come back to normal, which we all wish sometimes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking the questions from the students, and we will make sure to forward you all the remaining queries on the respective mail IDs of our panelists. So Ellen, you can formally end the session.
Yeah, sure, Varun. So now I would like to formally end the session with a vote of thanks. So the Corporate Relations Committee, IIM Kashipur, would like to express heartfelt gratitude to our panelists. They took out time on Sunday and they graced us with their presence in this event. Also, they helped in making this a resounding success. We are really grateful for your contribution, all the panelists, and we'll certainly take a lot of insights from this conclave. Abhikan, can you please share the screen? Yeah, thank you, Abhikan. So as a humble token of gratitude, we are really proud to present you with a certificate acknowledging planting of trees through our partner Grow Trees. So as we speak, we'll be sending you the certificates through mail. We hope this tree signifies the values that our industry leaders have towards the growth of a country. With this thought, we thank you all once again, and we hope to continue our association with you in the future as well. Thank you all, the guests.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was.
We also, while it's a Sunday evening, but I guess we enjoyed the discussions. And thanks for, I guess this is also a mark of leadership, the way you have organized the entire session. It was very well organized. Thank you. Thank you again. It was a pleasure to be part of the discussion.
Absolutely. It was great to be a part of the discussion. Hopefully, we meet again, and hopefully in person. Yeah, your college looks lovely from a distance. in your picture. Yeah,
We'd like to host you all in the campus, sir, in the near future.
absolutely. Okay.
It's
All
pleasure
right.
to see you all here. And I think what Amod is telling, we would like to see you in your green campus. And I think temperature must be less than 10 there. I can see. So all the very best. Stay safe. And I'm sure you all are vaccinated.
Thank you, sir.
Great.
Thanks for having us, everyone. It was excellent. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and it's always great to meet young professionals. Best of luck ahead.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.